Hi everyone, before I start, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? I'm curious, because what I'm about to share with you is not just another story. It's a story about kindness, karma, and the strange twists life can take when you least expect it. My name is Rebecca Parker. I'm 35 years old, and I live in a small town just outside Seattle, Washington. I've always believed that the world rewards kindness, even if it takes time. But that belief was tested the day my husband, Ethan, made me a cup of coffee, a very special cup. Now, before I go into details, let me tell you, I've been married to Ethan for 7 years. He's charming, funny when he wants to be, and can make anyone laugh with his jokes. But lately, something had changed between us. He had become distant, cold. And when his sister, Melanie, moved in with us, temporarily, after losing her apartment, things in our home shifted from peaceful to unbearable. Melanie was only 2 years younger than Ethan, but she acted like a queen ruling over a castle she didn't own. She criticized everything I did, the way I cooked, dressed, even how I smiled. "You're trying too hard to impress my brother," she'd sneer, sipping her coffee every morning as if she owned the kitchen. At first, I ignored her. I told myself she was just bitter because of her situation. Maybe she needed love. Maybe she needed understanding. I tried being kind, making her breakfast, folding her laundry, even giving her half of my closet space. But nothing softened her heart. In fact, the kinder I was, the crueler she became. Until one morning, the morning everything changed. It started with a strange smell. I had just finished watering the plants in our small backyard when Ethan called out from the kitchen, his voice unusually cheerful. "Made you a special coffee, honey." There was something about his tone that felt off. He sounded almost too happy. When I walked in, he was standing there with 2 mugs, smiling like he'd just done something amazing. "Special coffee?" I asked, setting down the watering can. "Yeah," he said, handing me a mug. "You've been stressed lately. I wanted to make you something to help you relax." That was sweet, on the surface. But when I lifted the mug to my lips, I noticed it immediately. The smell. It wasn't the warm, comforting aroma of coffee beans. It was strange, sharp, bitter, almost metallic. Like old medicine mixed with burnt sugar. I forced a small smile. "How sweet," I said softly. But something inside me froze. Melanie walked in just then, yawning dramatically and tying her silk robe. "Coffee already made?" "Well, that's new," she said, reaching for one of the mugs. And that's when the idea hit me. I didn't even plan it. My hands moved on their own. While Ethan turned to grab the sugar jar, I quietly swapped the mugs. I placed his special coffee in front of Melanie and slid the other one to myself. "Thanks, Ethan," I said brightly, lifting my now safe cup. "You're the best." Melanie smirked. "Don't mind if I do," she said, taking a big sip of the coffee meant for me. I watched her swallow. Watched Ethan's eyes flicker for half a second, like he'd seen something he didn't expect. But then he forced a grin. "Glad everyone's enjoying it." That was the moment. The exact second everything started to unravel. 25 minutes later, Melanie started coughing. At first, it was light, like a tickle in her throat. But soon, it grew louder, harsher. Her face turned pale. "Ugh, what was in that coffee?" she croaked, pressing a hand to her stomach. Ethan froze. His hand tightened around his cup. I stood there, heart pounding, pretending to be confused. "What's wrong, Mel?" She stumbled toward the sink, clutching her stomach. "My chest. I feel weird." Then she dropped to her knees. Everything that happened next felt like slow motion. Ethan rushed forward, his face drained of color. I stood there, trembling. Half from fear, half from realization. What had he put in that coffee? What did he mean by special? The mug lay shattered on the floor beside her, the strange-smelling liquid spreading across the tiles like spilled ink. And for a split second, I caught Ethan's eyes, wide, terrified, guilty. But before I could say a word, he whispered something under his breath, something I could barely hear. "Oh no, not her." And that's where everything changed. Now, before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to before that morning. Because to understand that moment, you need to understand who I was and what had led me there. You see, I wasn't always the kind of woman who doubted her husband's smile or questioned the smell of her coffee. I used to believe in goodness, in people, in giving second chances. I grew up in a small family in Oregon. My mother taught me that kindness always comes back around, like sunlight after a storm. My dad, a teacher, used to say, "Rebecca, life tests good people more because they can handle it." Maybe that's why I kept forgiving Ethan's coldness. Maybe that's why I didn't speak up when Melanie mocked me in front of guests, calling me the charity case Ethan married. I told myself it was temporary, that she was hurting, that being patient would win her over. But over the months, the bullying grew worse. She'd accidentally spill wine on my dresses, hide my car keys when I was running late, and once, she even told Ethan's friends that I couldn't have kids, which wasn't even true. Still, I stayed kind, because I believed that being good meant never fighting fire with fire. But that morning changed everything I thought I knew about kindness. It had started like any other Saturday. Ethan barely looked at me during breakfast. He spent most of the week working late, which I was starting to suspect meant something else. But I didn't ask questions. I'd learned that when a man doesn't want to tell the truth, he'll always find new ways to lie. I decided to spend the day cleaning, trying to distract myself. The air felt heavy in the house, like it knew something I didn't. That's when Ethan appeared, all smiles, holding that cup. "Made you a special coffee, honey." Such simple words. So harmless. But sometimes, the most dangerous things come in ordinary packages. Melanie was lying on the kitchen floor now, gasping for breath. Ethan was on the phone, shouting for help. My own hands were shaking so hard that I almost dropped my cup. Part of me wanted to rush forward, to help her. Another part of me stood frozen, the truth dawning like a dark sunrise. He hadn't made that coffee to be sweet. He'd made it to be final. That's where I'll stop for now. Because what happened after those 25 minutes, the moment after Melanie hit the floor, changed my life forever. And trust me, what came next was something none of us saw coming. But before we go there, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Before I continue, I want to thank everyone watching from all over. I've been reading the comments. I see people from Toronto, Texas, Vancouver, New York, and even Florida. You have no idea how much it means to me that you're here listening. Now, let's get back to that morning, the one that turned my world upside down. Melanie was lying motionless on the kitchen floor. Ethan knelt beside her, his hands shaking as he tried to lift her head. The smell of spilled coffee mixed with fear, a heavy, choking scent that clung to the air. "Mel, stay with me." Ethan's voice cracked. His eyes darted to me, wild, panicked. "Rebecca, call 911. I hesitated for half a second. My mind was spinning, replaying the past 25 minutes in fragments. The smell, the swap, the way Ethan's smile had faltered when Melanie picked up that mug. "Rebecca," he shouted again. That snapped me back. I grabbed the phone and dialed. My voice trembled as I spoke to the operator. "My sister-in-law, she collapsed. We think she's been poisoned or something. Please hurry." The paramedics arrived within minutes. They moved quickly, checking Melanie's pulse, placing an oxygen mask over her face, their voices calm and practiced. I stood near the sink, hugging myself tightly, trying to breathe. One of them looked up. "What did she drink?" I swallowed hard. "Coffee. My husband made it." Ethan turned sharply, his eyes flashing. "Rebecca." The paramedic didn't notice. "We'll need to take the cup with us for testing," he said, sliding the broken pieces into a plastic evidence bag. Ethan's jaw tightened. His hands fidgeted. "That's ridiculous. It was just coffee." But I saw it then, the guilt flickering behind his eyes. The truth trying to stay buried under panic. They took Melanie to the hospital. The house fell silent once the ambulance pulled away. Ethan stood in the middle of the kitchen, breathing hard, running a hand through his hair. I leaned against the counter, heart still racing. What was in that coffee, Ethan?" I asked softly. He didn't look at me. "I don't know. She must have had a reaction or something." "A reaction?" I repeated. To what? He turned sharply. I said I don't know. His voice echoed through the room, sharp enough to cut the air. I flinched, but didn't move. There was something about the way he said it, too defensive, too quick. My stomach turned. That was the moment I realized something deep down. The man I thought I knew, the man who once brought me roses and whispered promises under the stars, was hiding something far darker. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the fridge downstairs. Ethan was pacing the living room, his footsteps slow and uneven. I kept thinking back to the look on his face when he saw Melanie take that first sip. That tiny flicker of shock, like he hadn't expected her to drink it. What would have happened if I hadn't switched the mugs? Would I be lying in a hospital bed right now? The thought made my chest tighten. I picked up my phone and checked for updates from the hospital. None. No texts. No calls. Just silence. Around 2 a.m., I finally drifted into a restless sleep. But even in my dreams, I kept hearing Ethan's voice. Made you a special coffee, honey. The next morning, the sun streamed through the curtains, but it felt wrong. Too bright, too calm. I walked downstairs quietly, expecting to see Ethan in the kitchen, maybe pretending everything was normal. But the kitchen was empty. The mugs were gone. So were the broken shards. The floor was spotless, as if nothing had ever happened. I checked the trash can. Empty. The sink clean. It was as though the entire event had been erased overnight. That's when I noticed something else. Melanie's purse was still on the dining table. Her phone, her wallet, even her car keys, all untouched. My pulse quickened. I called the hospital. The nurse's voice was polite but careful. Yes, we have a patient named Melanie Parker. She's stable now. She's awake. Relief flooded through me, but only for a second. She's asking for you, the nurse added. Said it's urgent. I drove to the hospital, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The entire drive, my mind buzzed with questions. Did she know something? Did she remember anything about the coffee? When I entered her room, she looked pale but alert. Her eyes met mine, not with anger, but confusion. Rebecca, she whispered hoarsely. What was in that drink? I swallowed hard. You tell me, Mel. You were the one who drank it. Her lips trembled. Ethan said it was herbal, something to calm nerves. But after one sip, my throat burned. My heart dropped. He told you that? She nodded weakly. Yeah. Said it was your idea. I froze. My idea? That's when I realized Ethan wasn't just hiding something. He was twisting it. He was preparing his story, shaping it so I'd be the one blamed. I left the hospital feeling sick. My head was pounding, my heart pounding even harder. I sat in the car for a long time, just staring at the steering wheel. Why would he do this? Was it money? Another woman? Or had he just changed? All I knew was that something evil had entered our home, disguised as love. That evening, when I walked through the front door, Ethan was waiting. He smiled like nothing had happened. You visited her? Yes, I said quietly. She's awake. She told me everything. His smile faltered. Everything. She said you told her it was my idea to make that coffee. The silence that followed was thick, dangerous. His eyes narrowed. Well, wasn't it? I blinked, stunned. Are you serious right now? He stepped closer, voice low. Don't twist this, Rebecca. You wanted peace between you two. You said you'd do anything to make her calm down. My throat went dry. You think anyone's going to believe that? He smirked. They'll believe what I tell them. That was the first time I felt real fear around him. Not the kind that comes from words, but from the silence underneath them. I realized I was living with someone who could smile while lying straight to my face. Later that night, I went to the kitchen to get some water. The house was quiet again. But as I opened the fridge, something caught my eye, a small brown bottle tucked behind the milk. I pulled it out. The label was faded, but I could still read the word. Tranquilix, a sedative. Strong enough to knock out an adult in minutes, if overdosed. My stomach twisted. That was it. That was the smell in the coffee. My hands shook as I put it back exactly where I found it. I didn't want him to know I'd seen it. Not yet. Because in that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. If he was going to play dangerous games, I was going to play smarter ones. But the next morning, something happened that I didn't expect. A knock at the door.
Loud.
Sharp. When I opened it, 2 police officers stood there. "Mrs. Parker?" one of them asked. "We need to ask you a few questions about your sister-in-law's condition." Ethan appeared behind me, acting perfectly calm. "Of course, officers. Come in." They stepped inside.
One of them looked directly at me.
"We have reason to believe the coffee she drank may have been tampered with." Ethan's hand brushed my shoulder gently, like comfort. But I could feel the threat behind it. And then the officer said something that made my blood run cold. "The lab found traces of sedatives in her system. The same type registered to your prescription, Mrs. Parker." I froze. My prescription? I didn't even have one. But I knew exactly who did. And right there, in my own living room, standing beside the man who said he loved me, I realized the trap had already been set. That's where we'll stop for now. Because what happened next, when the police started asking their questions and Ethan began his act, that's when the story truly turned dark. Before I go on, let me know where you're watching from tonight. I see some of you from Los Angeles, Chicago, Nova Scotia, and Atlanta. Thank you for being here. Now take a deep breath with me because what happened next still gives me chills every time I think about it. The 2 police officers sat across from us in the living room. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock. Every sound felt amplified. Ethan sat beside me, calm and collected, while I struggled to keep my hands from trembling. "Mrs. Parker," the taller officer began, flipping through his notebook, "we received results from the hospital lab. Your sister-in-law's blood contained a high concentration of Tranquilix, a prescription sedative. It's used for severe anxiety and sleep disorders." I swallowed hard. I don't take that. I've never even heard of it until today. The officer's eyes didn't leave mine. "According to our records, a prescription for Tranquilix was filled last month under your name."
What?
I blinked in confusion. "That's impossible." Ethan leaned forward, his voice calm but concerned. "Honey, didn't you mention you were feeling stressed lately? Maybe the doctor prescribed something and you forgot?" My heart stopped. His tone was perfect, soft, reassuring, innocent. The officers turned to me. "Is that true, ma'am?" I shook my head.
No.
"No, it's not true." Ethan sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Rebecca, please. You've been having trouble sleeping for weeks. I picked up the prescription myself, you just didn't want to take it." My jaw dropped. "You what?" He turned to the officers, speaking like a worried husband. "She's been under a lot of stress. Work, family, taking care of my sister. Maybe she mixed something by accident." The officers nodded slowly, scribbling notes. I wanted to scream, to tell them he was lying. But the words tangled in my throat. The way he spoke, calm, steady, it made me look unstable. When they left, I stood there in silence. Ethan closed the door gently, then turned to face me. "Why?" I whispered. "Why are you doing this?" He smiled faintly. "Doing what?" "You're framing me, Ethan." He shrugged. "You're overreacting again, Rebecca. I'm just trying to help you remember." That's when I realized something terrifying. He wasn't just lying. He was gaslighting me, twisting reality so much that I'd start doubting myself. For the next few days, things got worse. Melanie remained in the hospital under observation, and Ethan acted like the perfect husband, cooking dinner, calling to check on her, even holding my hand in front of the neighbors. But behind closed doors, his mask slipped. Every time I brought up the coffee, he'd smile that cold smile. "Let it go, Rebecca. You're only making yourself look guilty." He'd leave the room whistling, while I sat there wondering how I had ever fallen in love with a man like that. 3 days later, I went back to the hospital to see Melanie again. She was sitting up this time, sipping water. Her face lit up when she saw me, then quickly darkened. "I talked to the police," she said quietly. "Ethan told them you were jealous of me." I blinked.
What?
He said you thought I was trying to take your place, she continued, avoiding my eyes. That you wanted to calm me down, but it went wrong. I sat down slowly, my heart pounding. You know that's not true. She hesitated. I don't know what to believe anymore, Rebecca. He sounded sincere. That word, sincere, cut through me like glass. Ethan had always been a master of charm. The kind of man who could smile while lying straight to your face and make you thank him for it. But hearing it from Melanie, the woman who tormented me for months, hurt more than I expected. That night, I decided to take control. After Ethan fell asleep, I quietly slipped out of bed and went downstairs. The house was dark except for the moonlight shining through the kitchen window. I opened the fridge and pulled out the small brown bottle, the one I'd found earlier. I took a picture of it with my phone, including the batch number and pharmacy label. Then I placed it back exactly as it was. I needed proof, something that could tie the bottle to him. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I froze. Couldn't sleep? Ethan's voice came from the shadows. I turned slowly. He was standing by the stairs, watching me. His face was half hidden in the dark. Just getting water, I said softly. He nodded, his eyes flickering toward the fridge. You've been restless lately. I forced a smile. Maybe I should try some of that Tranquilix you got me. He smiled back, but his eyes didn't. Maybe you should. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. There was a note on the counter. Went to check on Mel. Be back later. Love you. Love you. The words looked harmless, but now they felt like poison on paper. That day, I went to the pharmacy listed on the bottle's label. I showed the photo to the pharmacist. Can you tell me who picked up this prescription? I asked. She frowned. Sorry, ma'am, I can't share patient details. It's my name on it, I interrupted. Rebecca Parker. I just need to know if there's a signature. She hesitated, then checked the records. After a moment, she looked up confused. This one was picked up by Ethan Parker. He signed for it. My heart slammed in my chest. Can you print that out? She nodded. You'll have to file a formal request with the police, but yes, we can verify it. When I got home, Ethan's car was in the driveway. I hid my phone and walked in calmly, pretending nothing had happened. He was in the living room, watching the news. Hey, honey, he said, smiling. Hey. He looked at me, tilting his head. You look pale. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, forcing a small laugh. Just tired. He turned back to the TV. Maybe you should rest. You've had a rough week. I walked upstairs, but halfway up, I stopped. On the coffee table was his phone unlocked. I hesitated, then quietly picked it up. My hands shook as I scrolled through his messages. Most were harmless, work chats, a few from friends. But then I saw one that made my stomach twist. It was from an unknown number. Did she drink it yet? Ethan's reply, no. Her sister did. We'll have to change the plan. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt weak. I sat down slowly on the stairs, the phone trembling in my hands. What plan?
Who was he talking to?
Before I could screenshot the messages, I heard footsteps from the kitchen. Rebecca. Ethan called out. Did you see my phone anywhere? My heart raced. I locked the screen and placed it back on the table. It's right here, I said, forcing my voice to sound normal. He walked in, smiling. Thanks. He picked it up, glanced at it, then looked at me. You okay?
Yeah.
Just tired. He smiled wider. You always say that lately. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. Every sound, every creak of the floor, every sigh of the wind, made my skin crawl. I realized I wasn't safe. Not in my home. Not with him. I packed a small bag quietly, just my phone, wallet, and a few clothes. I planned to leave while he was sleeping. But as I zipped up the bag, something made me stop. I heard his voice, faint, muffled, coming from downstairs. He was on the phone. I crept toward the railing, listening. Yeah, he said quietly. She's starting to suspect. No, I can handle it. Just make sure everything looks like an accident this time. My blood turned cold. Accident. This time. And then before I could move, before I could even breathe, his head turned slightly. He looked up toward the stairs. Straight at me. That's where I'll stop for now. Because what happened after that moment, when our eyes met, and the truth was no longer hidden, was the beginning of the most dangerous night of my life. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from tonight. I see people from Calgary, Detroit, Tennessee, and even Boston. Thank you for sticking with me. What happens next is the night I realized love can turn into something unrecognizable, something dangerous. I stood frozen on the staircase, one hand gripping the railing so tightly my knuckles went white. Ethan's eyes locked with mine. For a split second, neither of us moved. The only sound in the room was the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock. Then he smiled. Slowly. Can't sleep again?
His voice was calm, too calm.
I swallowed hard. I thought I heard something. He leaned back on the couch, pretending to yawn. Probably the wind. You worry too much, Rebecca. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. He had no idea how much I'd overheard, or maybe he did, and he was waiting to see if I'd admit it. I forced a small smile and said, You're right. I'll go back to bed. But as I turned to go upstairs, his voice stopped me cold. Who were you talking to on the phone earlier? My blood froze. What? He stood up slowly, his expression unreadable. You were whispering upstairs. I heard you. My mind raced. I hadn't called anyone, but maybe he'd heard me packing. Maybe he knew I was planning to leave. I had to stay calm. I wasn't talking to anyone. Maybe you heard the TV. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing just slightly. You know, Rebecca, sometimes stress makes people imagine things. I forced a shaky laugh. Yeah, maybe that's it. He smiled again, but there was something hollow behind it. Go to bed, sweetheart. You need rest. I nodded and slowly climbed the stairs, never turning my back to him completely until I reached the top. I waited until I heard him sit back down before slipping quietly into the guest room instead of our bedroom. I sat in the dark for hours, clutching my phone, replaying his words. Make sure everything looks like an accident this time. What did that mean? Was he planning something worse? And who was on the other end of that call? Every instinct in my body screamed that I needed to get out of that house. But where could I go at 2 a.m.? And how could I leave without him noticing? At dawn, I heard his car start. I peeked through the curtain and saw him drive away, probably heading to the hospital or to meet whoever he'd been talking to. The moment he turned the corner, I moved. I grabbed my bag, phone, and car keys and bolted out the door. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the keys trying to unlock my car. I drove straight to Detective Holloway, the officer who'd been at our house days earlier. When I arrived at the station, I showed him everything: photos of the Tranquilix bottle, the screenshot of the pharmacy's record showing Ethan's signature, and the messages I'd seen on his phone before he caught me. He studied the evidence silently, then looked up. Mrs. Parker, this is serious. I know, I whispered. He's planning something. He said it should look like an accident this time. The detective leaned back. We'll look into this. But you need to be careful. If he suspects you've come to us, he could get desperate. I nodded. I'm not going back there. He handed me a card. If he contacts you, call me immediately. And I'd suggest you stay somewhere safe tonight. Maybe a friend or a hotel. I checked into a small motel just outside town. The room smelled faintly of old carpet and detergent, but it was quiet. Safe. Or at least, it felt that way. That evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Ethan, where are you, honey? I woke up and you were gone. Ethan, I'm worried about you. Please come home. We can fix this. Ethan, don't do anything stupid. The last message made my stomach twist. Don't do anything stupid. It wasn't a plea, it was a warning. Later that night, I received another message. But this one wasn't from Ethan. It was from an unknown number, the same one I'd seen in his phone earlier. Unknown. Did you tell her anything? My heart skipped. They thought I was him. I quickly typed back. Me no.
She's gone. I'll handle it.
My fingers trembled as I hit send. The next morning, Detective Holloway called. Rebecca, we checked the prescription logs. The handwriting on the pharmacy slip is definitely your husband's. We also traced the number that texted you. It's linked to a prepaid phone purchase with cash. No ID. I felt both relief and dread. So, what now? We're going to need a bit more, something that directly connects him to intent. If you're willing, we can set up a controlled situation. Something that lets us catch him trying again. My pulse raced. You mean bait him? He nodded. If he thinks he succeeded once, he may try again. We'll keep you safe, I promise. That evening, I received another text from Ethan. Ethan, Melanie's getting discharged tomorrow. She asked for you. Maybe this is a chance to make peace. My gut tightened. The timing was too perfect. I replied, okay. I'll come by in the morning. Detective Holloway agreed to send an undercover officer to watch from a distance. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital. Melanie was sitting up in bed, scrolling on her phone. When she saw me, she looked hesitant. I heard you left, she said quietly. I needed space, I replied. She nodded, then took a deep breath. Ethan told me something last night. My stomach dropped. What? He said you're not well, that you've been making up stories, that you might try to hurt yourself. I stared at her in disbelief. What? She looked down. He said he's scared for you. A chill ran through me. Melanie, please listen to me. He's lying. He's the one who poisoned you. He's setting me up. Her face softened for a second, but then the door opened. Ethan stepped in, holding a bouquet of flowers and wearing that same easy smile. Ladies, he said warmly. Peace offering. The air in the room shifted instantly. My pulse quickened. He handed the flowers to Melanie and turned to me. Glad you came, honey. I thought it was time, I said carefully. He reached into his bag and pulled out 2 takeaway cups. Coffee? Thought we could share a moment like old times. The world around me blurred. The same scent, the same warm smile, the same special coffee. My throat went dry. Detective Holloway's words echoed in my mind. We need proof of intent. Ethan handed me a cup. Go ahead, sweetheart. I made it just how you like it. I forced a smile. How sweet. Then I turned to Melanie. You first, since you've been through enough already. Ethan's eyes flickered, just like they had before. That tiny flash of panic. I froze in that moment, knowing I had him. But before I could say or do anything, a voice interrupted. Mrs. Parker, a nurse called from the hallway. You have a visitor. I turned, confused. A visitor? Ethan's expression shifted, something between shock and anger, as Detective Holloway stepped into the room, dressed casually, holding a hospital clipboard. Good morning, he said with a friendly smile. Just checking on patient care. Mind if I have a word with Mr. Parker outside? Ethan's face tightened. We're in the middle of something. The detective's smile didn't fade. I insist. As they stepped into the hallway, I could barely breathe. I turned to Melanie, whispering urgently, If anything happens to me, you tell them. He's dangerous. Melanie blinked, clearly shaken. Rebecca, what's going on? Before I could answer, there was a sudden crash in the hallway. A loud, shattering sound. Then yelling. Hands where I can see them. My heart leapt. I rushed to the door just as 2 officers appeared, one holding Ethan's arm twisted behind his back. In his free hand, they held a small syringe wrapped in tissue. He had this in his pocket, the detective said grimly. Full of tranquilic solution. The room spun. Melanie gasped. Ethan looked up at me, his face pale but calm. You shouldn't have switched the cups, he whispered. That's where I'll stop for now. Because even though it looked like it was over, trust me, it wasn't. The real shock came after the arrest, when I learned who had been helping him all along. And what they had planned next will leave you speechless. They say when the monster finally gets caught, that's where the story ends. But that's not true. When Ethan was dragged out of that hospital, cuffed and shouting my name, my nightmare didn't end. It only shifted shape. The next few days were a blur of police reports, hospital visits, and endless questions. Detective Holloway was thorough, almost obsessively so. He had me repeat every detail of the poisoning incident, from the smell of the coffee to the exact words Ethan had said. By the third retelling, my voice trembled. "Take your time," Holloway said gently. "We know this wasn't easy. But, Rebecca, there's something we need to show you." He slid a tablet across the table. On it was a photo, a blurry image from a hospital security camera. It showed Ethan in the parking lot late at night talking to someone. A woman. She was wearing scrubs. "Do you recognize her?" Holloway asked. At first, I didn't. Then she turned slightly in the frame, and my stomach twisted. It was Dr. Clara Weston, Ethan's colleague, the one who'd comforted me at the hospital, always insisting Ethan was just under stress. "She's the one who prescribed the sedatives," Holloway said. "The pharmacy logs match her credentials." My jaw went slack. She helped him? Looks like it. They've been covering for each other. We found several payments between their accounts, small amounts hidden under medical supply reimbursements. But it's a pattern. I leaned back in my chair, dizzy. Oh my God. She was always at our house for dinner. Always telling me I should trust him more. Holloway nodded grimly. "We think she was the one supplying the stronger compounds. Ethan might have mixed them into your drinks over time, but the real danger came from her." I whispered. So it wasn't just him. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the motel room made me jump. I kept checking the locks, the window, the hallway. The fear had changed shape. It wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was the realization that two people I had welcomed into my home had been working together to destroy me. By morning, Holloway called again. "Rebecca, we've arrested Dr. Weston. She's denying everything, but she's nervous. Says she has something to trade." I frowned. "Trade?" She says Ethan kept evidence on a hard drive, videos, recordings, things that could prove more than one case. My stomach dropped. More than one case? You mean?
Yes.
We believe Melanie wasn't the first victim. A week later, Holloway called me in to identify some items recovered from Ethan's office. Among them was a sleek black external drive, labeled simply P. It took their cyber unit 3 days to decrypt it. When they finally called me back in, Holloway looked shaken. "You might want to sit down for this." The screen lit up. Dozens of folders appeared. Each one had a name and a date. "Who are these people?" I asked. "Former patients," Holloway said quietly. "People who died unexpectedly. Mostly overdoses. Most of them signed off as natural causes under Ethan's supervision." I cover my mouth. "You mean he—" "Yes." He looked me in the eyes. "He's been doing this for years. And you almost became the next one." In the following weeks, I testified. I told everything I knew. Melanie even testified too, still pale but recovering. When the trial began, Ethan sat behind the defense table, calm, almost smug. Clara wouldn't look at me at all. When I took the stand, Ethan smiled faintly. That same cold, condescending smile. "Mrs. Parker," the defense attorney began, "you claim your husband tried to poison you. But is it possible, given your own admitted stress, that you imagined this?" I met his gaze and said clearly, "I imagined nothing. I lived it." The courtroom fell silent. Weeks later, the verdict came.
Guilty.
On all counts. Attempted murder, conspiracy, and medical malpractice leading to multiple deaths. Clara was charged as an accessory. I thought I'd feel relief. But instead, I just felt empty. Like the part of me that once believed in safety had been erased. Months passed. I sold the house. Changed my number. Moved to a small coastal town where no one knew my story. One morning, I was walking by the ocean when I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single line written in neat, careful handwriting. Accidents happen, even behind bars. There was no signature, but the handwriting was unmistakably Ethan's. Detective Holloway urged me to stay calm, said it could just be someone trying to scare me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over. And 2 nights later, when I came home to find my front door slightly ajar and a half-empty coffee mug sitting on my kitchen counter, the smell hit me first. That same strange, sweet, chemical scent. I froze in place. The night outside was silent, the cup still warm, and in the reflection of the kitchen window, I saw it. A faint shadow moved just beyond the porch light. That's where I'll stop for night, because what happened after that knock on my door changed everything again. And when you hear who is standing there, you'll understand that Ethan's reach didn't end with prison walls. Chapter 6 is where the real nightmare begins. The night the coffee cup reappeared was the night I realized evil doesn't end when it's locked away. Sometimes it finds a new way to breathe. It was 11:42 p.m. The air outside was cold and wet, the kind of night that smells like rain and sea salt. I'd just gotten back from a late shift at the small bookstore where I worked, grateful for a bit of normalcy. But as soon as I opened the door, that smell, that awful, wrong sweetness, wrapped around me like invisible smoke. It was coming from my kitchen counter. A white mug, steam still curling from the top, and the note beneath it, written in the same tight, slanted handwriting I'd seen on the prison letter. Thought you might miss your special coffee.
E.
My heart nearly stopped. I didn't move for several seconds. The house was silent except for the slow drip of rain on the window pane. My fingers trembled as I grabbed my phone and called Detective Holloway. He picked up on the second ring. Rebecca, there's a mug. On my counter. Coffee. It's fresh. Are you in the house right now?
Yes.
I just walked in.
Get out now.
Don't touch anything. I grabbed my coat and ran outside barefoot. My heart pounded as I stood by the mailbox under the orange glow of the street lamp, the cold biting at my skin. Holloway arrived 15 minutes later with 2 patrol cars. They swept the house, checked every window, every corner. Nothing. No fingerprints. No forced entry. No sign anyone had been inside. Except that mug. It was still warm when the forensics team bagged it. The next morning, Holloway came by again. His eyes were heavy. He hadn't slept either. He said quietly, "Ethan couldn't have sent this. We checked. He's been in solitary confinement for 3 weeks." My heart dropped. Then who? Someone on the outside. He hesitated. Someone who had access to your address. I frowned. But my address isn't public. I moved 3 states away. He looked down. Rebecca, there's a leak somewhere. Either someone from the precinct or someone close to you. I sat on the couch, clutching a blanket around me like armor. Could it be Clara? I whispered. She's still waiting for sentencing. Holloway sighed. We're looking into that. Her lawyer requested a transfer last week to a psychiatric unit. But before it went through, she disappeared during transport. I stared at him, numb. You're saying she escaped?
Yes.
2 days ago. That night, I locked every window, double-checked every door, and still couldn't sleep. I kept hearing footsteps outside. Maybe it was the wind, maybe it wasn't. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the wood floor, even the whisper of my own breath. Around 3 a.m., I finally dozed off on the couch. When I woke up, it was dawn. The first thing I noticed was that my front door was open. Just an inch. I froze. There was something new on the floor, a small brown envelope. Inside it was a photo. It showed me, sleeping on that same couch. I screamed and dropped the photo. My hands shook uncontrollably as I called Holloway again. When he arrived, I could barely speak. He took one look at the photo and cursed under his breath. "This isn't random anymore," he said. "She's toying with you." She? Clara. He nodded grimly. "The security footage from a gas station near your street caught her 2 hours ago. She's in the area, Rebecca." The next 48 hours felt like living inside a movie I never auditioned for. Police patrol cars stayed near the house. Holloway ordered surveillance on my phone. He even stationed an undercover officer in a van down the street. But fear has a way of creeping through cracks no police badge can seal. I couldn't shake the image of that photo. Me asleep, unaware, vulnerable. Someone had been inside my home again. 3 nights later, I received a text from an unknown number. Unknown. He never meant to hurt you, Rebecca. You ruined both our lives. My fingers trembled. Clara? I typed back. Where are you? Unknown. Closer than you think. I ran to the window and froze. A figure stood at the edge of the woods behind my house. A woman. Her hospital scrubs torn, her hair matted, and in her hand, a mug. I called Holloway again, shouting into the phone. He told me to stay hidden and keep the lights off. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. The woman started to move closer.
Slowly, calmly.
Like she knew she had time. I crouched behind the couch, clutching my phone, heart slamming so hard I thought it would burst. The pounding on my door started softly, tap, tap, tap. Then louder.
Bang, bang, bang.
Rebecca. A voice called, calm but trembling. You don't understand. Ethan loved you. He just wanted to make you better. Let me explain. Red and blue lights flashed outside. Officers stormed the yard, shouting commands. But Clara didn't run. She turned toward the woods, mug still in her hand, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she drank it. The mug fell, shattering on the gravel. Her body hit the ground moments later. When Holloway reached her, she was still breathing, barely. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital. Before they loaded her into the ambulance, she opened her eyes, found me through the window, and mouthed something. 3 words. He's still alive. Holloway tried to calm me. She's delirious, he said. She doesn't know what she's saying. But deep down, something in me whispered otherwise. Because that night, after they took her away, I got one more text from that same number. Coffee tastes better when it's shared, honey. No name. No emojis. Just the message. And as I stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window, I noticed something else. My back door, which I had locked an hour earlier, was now slightly open again. The smell of coffee drifted in. That's where I'll pause the story for now. Because what I found behind that half-open door the next morning changed everything, not just about Ethan or Clara, but about why all this started in the first place. The morning after that terrifying night, I barely dared to breathe. The house was silent, almost unnaturally so. I crept down the stairs, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The front door was locked. The windows were closed. But the back door, that back door was ajar, just like I had seen it the night before. I gripped the handle and pushed it slowly open, the hinges creaking under my careful touch. Outside, the yard was empty. Wet grass reflected the early sunlight, and a faint mist hovered over the ground. I stepped outside cautiously, glancing around. Nothing. No signs of footprints other than my own. I exhaled slowly, telling myself I was imagining things. But the smell hit me before I could convince myself otherwise. The same strange, sweet scent of coffee drifting from the patio table. On the table was a single cup. Steam rose lazily from the surface, curling into the morning air like a ghost. I froze. My fingers shook as I reached for my phone. Detective Holloway answered on the second ring. Rebecca. Someone or something? I started, my voice trembling. There's a cup.
Coffee.
And I swear, Holloway, the smell fits him. Or her. I don't know. He replied calmly but firmly. Stay calm. Don't touch anything. I'm sending backup. Just stay where you are and keep your distance. I hung up and stepped back, heart racing. Then I noticed something on the saucer, a folded note. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was neat, familiar, chilling. Some things are better left unfinished. But I promised you a special cup, didn't I? I shivered. My stomach turned. I recognized the handwriting immediately, Ethan's. Not Clara's. My mind raced. How could he be alive? I had seen him arrested. I had testified against him. He was in prison locked away. And yet here was proof that he had returned somehow. Minutes later, Holloway arrived with two uniformed officers. They scanned the area carefully. No sign of forced entry, he said, frowning. But the cup is still warm? I nodded.
Yes.
I didn't touch it. I swear. He crouched down and carefully bagged the cup as evidence. Rebecca, something about this doesn't make sense. Ethan couldn't have done this alone. If this is real, someone helped him. Someone who knew you, your routines, and how to get inside undetected. My heart sank. It had to be Clara. She had disappeared during her transfer. She had the motive, the skills, and the audacity. But why leave a cup in my yard, in full view? It was almost theatrical. A warning. Holloway nodded, as if reading my thoughts.
Exactly.
Whoever did this wanted you to know they were close. And they wanted to terrify you. The next few days were tense. I stayed with friends, moving from house to house under Holloway's advice. I didn't know who I could trust. Every knock at the door, every phone vibration, made my stomach drop. Then one evening I got a call from Melanie. Her voice was calm, steady, different from the scared tone she had months ago. "Rebecca, you need to know something about Ethan," she said. I sat down, my hand clutching the phone. "What is it?" "There's a safe," she whispered, "at the old Parker estate. He kept things there. Not just files. Things we didn't know about. I think he planned for contingencies, ways to get back if he was caught." My blood ran cold. Contingencies? Like what? "I don't know," she admitted. "But I found a key hidden in his desk months ago. I never thought to use it until now." The next morning, with Holloway accompanying me, we drove to the old Parker estate. The house was abandoned, silent, and overgrown. The air smelled of damp wood and decay. I felt a knot in my stomach. Holloway handed me the key. "Let's see what he left behind." I inserted the key into the dusty old lock. It turned with a creak. The door opened. Inside, it was a storage room filled with boxes, filing cabinets, and a locked chest in the corner. I knelt beside it, heart racing. The chest was heavy, locked with a small padlock. My fingers shook as I put the key in. It clicked open. Inside, my hands went cold.
Files.
Envelopes. USB drives. And in the middle, a journal. Ethan's handwriting sprawled across every page. I opened it carefully, reading the first entry. "Rebecca doesn't know yet. She thinks I'm gone. But plans have been in place. Everything I do is for control. For love. She will understand one day." I swallowed hard. It was the same twisted justification he had always given himself. But then I found something else, a series of dates and times, addresses, and instructions. One of them was my current location. My house. The instructions were chilling. Make her believe she is safe. Leave the cup. Observe. Wait for her reaction. If she escapes, contingency plan B is in place. My blood ran cold. He hadn't just returned for revenge. He had planned it meticulously. Every move, every step, calculated to terrorize me. I looked at Holloway. He knew I'd survive, but he wanted to scare me. He nodded grimly. "This isn't over until every single contingency is neutralized. We're going to sweep every location linked to him, and we'll ensure he can't hurt you again." Weeks later, after a coordinated operation, law enforcement recovered hidden stashes, documents, and even Clara, who had been assisting Ethan from a remote location. Both were taken into custody. Holloway assured me it was finally over. And for the first time in months, I breathed freely. I returned to my small coastal town, finally safe. I brewed my morning coffee, this time my own, in my own mug. I sat by the window, watching the ocean waves crash against the rocks, listening to the wind in the pines. I reflected on what had happened, the betrayal, the danger, the fear. And through it all, one truth became clear. No matter how cruel people can be, kindness and empathy remain our greatest shields. Melanie had survived because I acted with courage. I survived because I stayed aware, and because people like Detective Holloway believed in justice. I poured cream into my coffee and smiled softly. Life was fragile, yes. But it was also beautiful. and I would never take a single peaceful moment for granted again. The cup of coffee that had started all this terror, the one that smelled strange, the one that could have killed me, sat in my kitchen now, empty. I smiled at it, a reminder of everything I had survived. Because surviving it all wasn't just luck. It was strength. It was awareness. It was courage. And sometimes it's the smallest acts of kindness and bravery that save your life.